2:17 p.m., November 12, 2024. The Magnolia Grand Hotel security camera captured Alicia Howard, 55, entering the lobby with his daughter Tasha, 23, his hand gripping her arm. At 8:43 a.m. the next morning, only Tasha exited, her clothes blood-stained, eyes vacant. What happened in room 512 would expose decades of horror and one desperate moment of survival. Have you ever wondered how many secrets hide behind the perfect family image that people present to the world? If you haven't joined the Guilty Whispers community yet, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell to become part of our growing family of true crime enthusiasts. Share your location in the comments below. We love seeing how our stories connect people across the world. The first call came into Birmingham Police Department at 9:12 a.m. on November 13, 2024. Jabari Montgomery, head of security at the Magnolia Grand Hotel, had been conducting a routine check of rooms with late checkouts. Room 512 had been silent when housekeeping knocked earlier that morning, but the guests hadn't officially checked out. Montgomery used his master key and pushed open the door to what should have been an empty room or perhaps one with guests oversleeping after a late night. "The smell hit me first," Montgomery later told Detective Xavier Dupree. "Metallic. Like copper pennies. Then I saw the bathroom door cracked open, light spilling out. Something about that light seemed wrong, too still, too quiet." Montgomery, a former military police officer who had seen combat in Afghanistan, approached cautiously. He pushed the bathroom door wider with his foot, his hand instinctively reaching for a weapon he no longer carried. The scene that greeted him would haunt his dreams for months to come. Inside the bathroom, Alicia Howard lay in the bathtub, a fatal wound across his throat. Blood had pooled and begun to dry, staining the white porcelain a deep crimson. The broken base of a bathroom light fixture lay nearby, its edge stained dark red. Bloody handprints marked the wall above the tub, as if someone had steadied themselves after the violence. Montgomery immediately secured the scene and called police, then contacted hotel management. Within minutes, he was reviewing security footage, searching for any sign of the second registered guest, Alicia Howard's daughter, Tasha. "We need to find her," Montgomery told the hotel manager, Patricia McCoy. "Either she's in danger, or she's dangerous." By 9:30 a.m., Detective Xavier Dupree arrived with his team. At 48, Dupree was a 20-year veteran of Birmingham PD, with a reputation for methodical thoroughness. With salt and pepper hair cropped close to his scalp and eyes that missed nothing, Dupree had solved some of the city's most challenging homicide cases through patient, detailed investigation. He surveyed the hotel room, noting signs of a struggle, an overturned chair, a lamp knocked to the floor, a cell phone shattered against the wall. The king-sized bed was rumpled, but showed no signs of blood. A half-empty bottle of champagne sat in an ice bucket, now just a container of water with a floating bottle. Two glasses stood nearby, one with lipstick on the rim, barely touched. The other empty. "Where's the daughter?" he asked Montgomery. Hotel records showed two guests had checked in, Alicia Howard and his daughter Tasha Howard. "That's the strange thing," Montgomery replied, queuing up security footage on his tablet. "She left the hotel at 8:43 this morning. Walked right past the front desk, out the main doors. Look." The grainy security footage showed a young black woman in jeans and a dark sweater, her arms wrapped around herself as if cold, despite the mild November temperature. Her clothes appeared stained, her movements mechanical, her eyes focused on nothing. "Nobody stopped her?" Dupree asked, studying the footage. "Nobody knew anything had happened," Montgomery explained. "Housekeeping hadn't reported finding the body yet. She just walked out. Didn't check out, didn't speak to anyone." Dupree immediately dispatched officers to search the surrounding area. "She couldn't have gone far on foot," he reasoned. "We need to find her, either as a suspect or a victim. She might need medical attention. Pull all the security footage from the moment they checked in," Dupree instructed Montgomery. I want to see every movement they made in this hotel. The investigation team quickly established a command post in a vacant conference room of the Magnolia Grand Hotel. Crime scene technicians processed room 512 with meticulous care, photographing and collecting each piece of evidence. Blood spatter patterns on the bathroom wall told a story of a violent struggle. The broken light fixture, the apparent murder weapon, was carefully preserved for DNA and fingerprint analysis. Bloody footprints leading from the bathroom to the door showed where the survivor had walked away from the scene. Dupree assigned Detective Cleo Johnson to begin constructing a timeline, starting with the Howards' arrival. Johnson, 36, was known for her attention to detail and her skill at interviewing witnesses. She began with Naomi Bird, the receptionist who had checked in the Howards. Bird, 31, remembered the interaction vividly. They arrived at exactly 2:17 p.m., she recalled, consulting the computer record. The father did all the talking. He booked a king suite, which I thought was odd for a father and adult daughter. When I mentioned we had rooms with 2 queen beds available, he laughed and said, "My Tasha has terrible nightmares. Always has since she was little. Sleeps better when I'm nearby to comfort her." Bird described how Tasha barely spoke during the entire check-in process. When I asked for their IDs, she started to reach into her purse, but he immediately pulled out both of their driver's licenses from his wallet. Said something like, "I keep everything organized for our trips, don't I, sweetheart?" But she just looked at the floor. What struck Bird most was how Alicia maintained physical contact with his daughter throughout the entire interaction, a hand on her shoulder, her back, her arm. It wasn't normal, Bird insisted. "I have a 22-year-old daughter myself. We're close, but we don't stand that way." And his eyes, he watched her every move, like he was afraid she'd bolt if he let go for even a second. Bird admitted she'd considered alerting her manager but talked herself out of it. Who am I to judge someone else's family dynamics, right? Maybe she had special needs I didn't understand. Maybe there was a good reason he was so attentive. Montgomery guided Detective Dupree through the hotel's comprehensive security system. "We have cameras in all public areas, lobby, corridors, elevators, restaurant, pool area. Footage is stored for 30 days. They started with the check-in. The timestamp showed Alicia and Tasha Howard approaching the front desk at exactly 2:17 p.m. the previous day. Alicia kept a firm grip on Tasha's upper arm as they waited. When the receptionist, Naomi Bird, greeted them, Alicia's demeanor visibly shifted, his grip loosened, his posture relaxed, and he offered a charming smile. "Good afternoon," he said on the footage, his voice warm and paternal. "Checking in for Howard. Alicia and Tasha. Father-daughter getaway." The transformation was remarkable, from controlling to charming in an instant. "He's practiced at this," Dupree observed. 2 different personas he can switch between. The footage tracked the Howards' movement to the elevator. Inside the elevator, Alicia kept a firm grip on Tasha's shoulders. When an elderly couple entered on the second floor, Alicia immediately adjusted, keeping a hand lightly on Tasha's back while engaging the couple in friendly conversation. The moment the couple exited on the 4th floor, his grip tightened visibly on Tasha's arm. Footage from the 5th floor corridor showed them walking to room 512, Alicia guiding Tasha with his hand firmly on her lower back. Once they reached their door, Alicia unlocked it, motioned Tasha inside, then glanced back down the corridor before following her and closing the door behind them. At 11:15 a.m., just as Dupree was reviewing the lobby footage, his radio crackled with news. A patrol officer had located Tasha Howard 3 blocks from the hotel. She sat huddled on a bus stop bench, staring vacantly ahead, still wearing blood-stained clothes. When approached, she didn't resist or speak. She was immediately transported to Birmingham Memorial Hospital. "I want 2 officers with her at all times," Dupree instructed. "Not as guards, as protection. We don't know what happened in that room yet, but she's either a suspect or a victim, possibly both. At the hospital, emergency room Dr. Julian Carter documented Tasha's physical condition. His report noted defensive wounds on her hands and forearms, deep cuts and bruising consistent with warding off an attack. Ligature marks around her throat suggested someone had attempted to strangle her. Most telling were the bruises on her wrists and upper arms, some fresh, others in various stages of healing, indicating a pattern of physical restraint over time. These aren't just from one night, Dr. Freeman noted in his report. The older bruising suggests a history of similar injuries. I've seen this pattern in domestic abuse victims. Tasha remained nearly catatonic, responding minimally to questions, her gaze fixed on the middle distance. Given her traumatic state, Dr. Nicole Adams, a 42-year-old psychologist specializing in trauma, was called in. With warm brown eyes and a quiet, steady presence, Dr. Adams had worked with assault victims for nearly 15 years. Dr. Adams approached Tasha with gentle patience. "I'm Dr. Adams," she said softly, sitting nearby but not too close. "You're safe here, Tasha. No one is going to hurt you. You don't have to speak until you're ready, but I want you to know you're protected now." For nearly an hour, Tasha remained silent, occasionally flinching at sudden noises or movements. Dr. Adams continued her quiet presence, occasionally offering reassurances without demanding responses. Finally, Tasha spoke, her voice barely audible. "Is he dead?" When Dr. Adams confirmed that Alicia Howard had died, Tasha's body sagged, as though a wire holding her upright had been cut. Tears streamed down her face, but her expression showed relief rather than grief. "He can't find me anymore," she whispered, before lapsing back into silence. Back at the Magnolia Grand Hotel, Detective Dupree and his team continued piecing together the Howards' movements. After settling into their room, they had emerged at approximately 6 p.m., taking the elevator down to the hotel restaurant for dinner. The footage showed them walking with Alicia's hand firmly on Tasha's back, guiding her movements. The hotel restaurant's security footage provided another window into their dynamic. They were seated at 7:15 p.m. The footage had no audio, but the body language told a clear story. Alicia did all the talking with the waiter, DeAndre Wells. When Tasha attempted to speak directly to Wells, Alicia immediately placed his hand over hers on the table, squeezing it while smiling at the waiter. Wells, 27, had just finished his shift when Detective Johnson caught up with him. "That table stuck with me," Wells admitted, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. "I've worked here 3 years, seen all kinds of people, but something about them made me uncomfortable." He described how Alicia had ordered for both of them without consulting Tasha. "Filet mignon for me, medium rare, and the grilled chicken salad for my daughter, she's watching her figure," Wells quoted. Then he told me she wouldn't need a dessert menu later because sweets go straight to her hips. What disturbed Wells most was how Tasha seemed to physically diminish in her father's presence. She barely looked up from the table, he recalled. At one point, she asked if she could have a glass of wine, and her father laughed it off, telling me, "Just water for her. She's on medication that doesn't mix with alcohol." The way he said it, like he was warning her, not informing me. When Tasha excused herself to use the restroom during the meal, Wells observed Alicia watching the restroom door intently. After about 5 minutes, he stood up and positioned himself right outside the women's restroom. When she came out, I saw him grip her arm. It wasn't gentle. I almost said something, but they were back at the table before I could process what I'd seen. Detective Johnson noted how multiple staff members had observed concerning interactions but hadn't connected the dots. Each person had seen a fragment of the larger pattern, but without communication between them, the full picture remained obscured. As the investigation expanded, Dupree assigned Detective Johnson to research Alicia Howard's background. She quickly established that he was a prominent figure in Detroit's real estate development scene. Howard Urban Development had completed several high-profile commercial projects over the past 15 years, and Alicia Howard was known as a shrewd but respected businessman. "He's got serious money," Johnson reported, scrolling through financial records on her laptop. His company completed a $30 million development last year. Lives in Palmer Woods, that's an exclusive neighborhood in Detroit. Member of the Greater Detroit Business Association, Detroit Golf Club, and he sits on the board of 3 charitable foundations. The public records painted a picture of a successful entrepreneur with deep community ties. Articles in the Detroit Business Journal described him as a devoted single father who balanced a thriving career with hands-on parenting. One profile piece from 3 years earlier quoted him saying, "Everything I do for my daughter. She's my world." Johnson dug deeper, searching for any previous incidents or police reports. "Nothing in Birmingham," she reported. "His record in Detroit is clean, not even a parking ticket. But I'm requesting access to sealed records. Something feels off about this perfect image." Medical examiner Dr. Keisha Powell arrived at the scene by noon. Her preliminary examination confirmed what seemed apparent: Alicia Howard had died from a deep laceration to the throat, likely from the broken light fixture found nearby. Time of death was estimated between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. The wound has distinctive glass pattern marks consistent with that fixture, Dr. Powell noted, pointing to the jagged edge of the broken glass. Significant force was applied. There are defensive wounds on both arms, indicating he tried to ward off attacks. His blood alcohol level appears elevated, but will need toxicology to confirm. At Birmingham Memorial Hospital, Dr. Adams continued her gentle work with Tasha. By late afternoon, as the young woman's shock began to ease slightly, she had begun sharing fragments of information. "He said this was our special trip," she whispered, twisting the hospital blanket between her fingers. "Said it was time to make everything official." When Dr. Adams asked what "official" meant, Tasha's breathing became rapid, and she curled into herself. "He brought a ring," she eventually said, her voice shaking. "Not a normal ring. He called it our commitment ceremony." Dr. Adams carefully documented each disclosure, recognizing the emerging pattern of inappropriate father-daughter dynamics. She arranged for a sexual assault nurse examiner to conduct an evaluation with Tasha's consent. Meanwhile, Detective Johnson had located Tasha's mother. The divorce records showed Shanice Pearson had surrendered all parental rights when Tasha was 4 years old. The official story, repeated in numerous interviews Alicia had given over the years, was that Shanice had abandoned them, unable to handle the responsibilities of motherhood. Tracking Shanice down proved challenging. She had no social media presence, no property records, and had changed her name after remarrying. Eventually, Johnson located her in Cincinnati, Ohio, living under the name Shanice Wilson. The woman who opened the door to Detective Johnson looked worn beyond her 52 years, with premature gray streaking her dark hair. When told why the detective was there, Shanice sank into a chair, her hands shaking. "Is Tasha alive?" was her first question. Assured that her daughter had survived, Shanice agreed to be interviewed. Her account contradicted the abandonment narrative Alicia had constructed. "He was charming when we met, successful, attentive, seemed perfect," Shanice explained, her voice soft but steady. "After we married, the control started gradually. First, it was about my clothes, then my friends, then how I spent every minute. When I got pregnant, he became obsessed. Monitored everything I ate, who I spoke to, even had cameras installed to keep me safe while he was working. After Tasha was born, Alicia's control intensified. He insisted on making all decisions regarding their daughter, from feeding schedules to which doctors she saw. When Tasha was 4, Shanice finally gathered the courage to leave, planning to take her daughter. He caught me packing," she recalled, tears streaming down her face. "He was so calm, that's what terrified me most. He said if I tried to take Tasha, he'd destroy me. Said he had friends in the police department, that he'd claim I was an unfit mother, mentally unstable. Then he offered me $50,000 to walk away completely." Young, frightened, and without resources, Shanice had accepted the deal, signing away her parental rights. "I've regretted it every day since," she whispered. "I tried to reconnect when she was a teenager, sent letters, tried to call, but he blocked me at every turn. Filed restraining orders claiming I was harassing them." She produced a box containing dozens of returned letters she'd sent to Tasha over the years, each marked, "Return to sender." "I gave up trying 3 years ago," she admitted. "But not a day goes by that I don't think about her." While the Birmingham investigation proceeded, Detective Johnson obtained a warrant to search Alicia Howard's Detroit home. The Palmer Woods residence was imposing, a 5-bedroom colonial on a tree-lined street where properties regularly sold for over $1 million. The home's exterior presented the perfect image of success and respectability. Inside, however, Johnson discovered a more disturbing reality. The master bedroom was predictably luxurious, but Tasha's room contained troubling elements. Despite belonging to a 23-year-old woman, it was decorated for a much younger girl, with pastel colors and stuffed animals. More concerning were the security measures, an elaborate lock on the outside of the door and a camera mounted in the corner of the ceiling. He could monitor her from his bedroom, Johnson reported to Dupree via video call, showing the surveillance setup. "The monitor is next to his bed. And there's a keypad lock on her door, the kind that can only be unlocked with a code from the outside." In Alicia's home office, behind a large painting of himself with a young Tasha, Johnson discovered a wall safe. When opened by a locksmith, it revealed meticulously kept journals dating back 19 years, beginning shortly after Shanice left. The earliest entries detailed his parenting philosophy. "Tasha needs structure and constant guidance," one entry read. "Without a mother's influence, it falls to me to shape her into the perfect companion. Our bond will be special, unique, deeper than ordinary father-daughter relationships." As the journals progressed through the years, the entries became increasingly concerning. Alicia documented training sessions where he taught Tasha proper behavior, with punishments for infractions. He recorded her development in unsettling detail, noting physical changes with inappropriate interest. "Her body is changing," read an entry from when Tasha was 12. "I've explained that these changes are natural but that they must be kept private. Only I should know about them. I've removed the full-length mirror from her room, she doesn't need to focus on her appearance. That's for me to monitor." By the time Tasha reached adolescence, the journals revealed Alicia's determination to isolate her from outside influences. He pulled her from public school, citing concerns about moral corruption, and established homeschooling under his direct supervision. He restricted her friendships, monitored her reading materials, and controlled her clothing choices. "Had to intervene today," read an entry from when Tasha was 16. "Found her talking to a boy from the neighborhood. She claimed they were just discussing a book, but I could see his intentions. I've restricted her outdoor privileges for the next month to ensure she understands the danger of such interactions." The most recent journals, from the past year, showed growing agitation as Tasha had apparently begun showing signs of independence. "She's been influenced by outside forces," one entry noted. "Found a community college brochure hidden in her drawer. She doesn't understand that we belong together. No one will ever love her like I do." An entry from just 2 weeks before the Birmingham trip laid out his disturbing plan. "The Birmingham arrangement is set. I've found the perfect place for our commitment ceremony, private, elegant, far from prying eyes. Once we've made our bond official, she'll understand there's no escaping what we have. I've ordered the ring, platinum with diamonds, worthy of my perfect girl." Johnson also discovered financial records showing Alicia had been paying several individuals for years, including a Detective Philip Foster of the Detroit Police Department. This explained how previous concerns about Tasha's welfare had been dismissed. Foster had retired 6 months earlier, suddenly purchasing a vacation home in Florida despite his modest police salary. Back in Birmingham, Detective Dupree continued piecing together the events leading up to the fatal confrontation. Hotel security footage captured the Howards returning to their room after dinner, at approximately 9:30 p.m. They didn't emerge again until the next morning, when Tasha left alone. However, footage from the corridor outside their room revealed additional context. At 10:15 p.m., Tasha briefly exited the room alone, walking quickly toward the ice machine area where there was a vending machine. The camera caught her frantically inserting cash and purchasing a prepaid phone card. Moments later, Elisha appeared in the hallway, his posture rigid with anger. When he spotted her, his expression immediately shifted to concern. He approached, putting his arm around her shoulders while speaking into her ear. Though no audio was captured, his grip was visibly tight as he guided her back to their room. The hotel gift shop attendant, Kayla Michaels, 22, provided additional insight when interviewed. The daughter came in alone around 5:30 p.m., Michaels recalled. She seemed nervous, kept looking toward the door. She asked if we sold prepaid phones. We don't, but I told her about the prepaid phone cards in the vending machine. She thanked me, but before she could leave, her father appeared. Michaels described how Elisha's demeanor seemed pleasant but had an underlying tension. He joked about his daughter always forgetting her wallet, bought some snacks and a magazine instead, and led her out. But the way his fingers dug into her arm, I remember thinking it looked painful. Interviews with other hotel guests provided further insights. Lawrence Thompson, staying in room 510, directly adjacent to the Howards, had called the front desk at 11:27 p.m. The walls aren't exactly soundproof, Thompson explained to Dupree. At first, I heard raised voices, a man shouting things like, "After everything I've done for you," and, "You belong to me." Then a woman crying, begging someone to stop. I heard things crashing around, furniture moving. That's when I called the front desk. Night manager Isaiah Taylor, 45, confirmed receiving Thompson's call. I sent our security guard, Anthony Phillips, to check on the situation. Our protocol is to knock and inquire if everything is all right, but not to enter unless there's clear evidence of danger. Phillips, 32, described arriving at room 512 at approximately 11:35 p.m. I knocked twice. Everything went quiet immediately. Then a male voice said everything was fine, just a movie playing too loudly. I asked if everyone was okay, and the same voice assured me they were. Hotel policy is to respect guest privacy unless we have clear reason to believe someone's in danger. Phillips admitted hesitating outside the door. I heard what sounded like crying, but it was faint. I raised my hand to knock again, but then talked myself out of it. I've replayed that moment 1,000 times since learning what happened. If I'd just insisted on seeing both occupants. As the physical evidence mounted, Dr. Nicole Adams continued her gentle work with Tasha at the hospital. By the third day, Tasha had begun to provide a more coherent narrative of her life with Elisha Howard and the events in room 512. He controlled everything, Tasha explained, her voice steadier now. What I wore, what I studied, who I spoke to. He homeschooled me until I was 18, said public school would corrupt me. When I begged to go to college, he only allowed community college classes that he approved, and only part-time. The isolation had been systematic and complete. Tasha had never had a social media account, never owned a phone that wasn't monitored, never had friends her father didn't approve. Even her part-time job at the Detroit Public Library had been carefully controlled. Elisha would drive her there, speak with her supervisor about limiting her interactions with patrons, and pick her up precisely at the end of her shift. If I was even 5 minutes late coming out of the building, there would be consequences, Tasha explained, her fingers absently tracing the fading bruises on her arms. He said it was because he worried, because he loved me more than anyone else ever could. Tasha described how her father had maintained two distinct personas, the charming, respected businessman and devoted father in public, the controlling, abusive tyrant in private. He'd hurt me at home, then drive me to the emergency room in another county, telling the doctors I was clumsy, accident-prone. He'd be so concerned, so loving in front of them. 3 months earlier, Tasha had secretly begun therapy, using money saved from her closely monitored library job. Dr. Leslie helped me understand what was happening wasn't normal. That his behavior wasn't love, it was control and abuse. She helped me see that the things he'd been doing since I was a child, they weren't appropriate. The therapy had given Tasha the courage to plan an escape. She had been saving money, researching women's shelters, and preparing to leave while Alicia was scheduled to attend a business conference the following month. He found my therapy appointment card in my wallet, Tasha explained. He didn't confront me immediately. Instead, he announced this special father-daughter trip to Birmingham. Said we needed quality time together. The night of the incident, they had returned to their hotel room after dinner. Alicia had opened a bottle of champagne he'd brought with them, insisting they toast their special relationship. Then he'd presented her with a ring box. It was a diamond ring, not a normal gift from a father to a daughter, Tasha recalled, her voice shaking. He called it a commitment ring. Said it was time to make our relationship official. Said we were meant to be together in every way. When Tasha refused, Elisha's demeanor changed instantly. His face just transformed. He grabbed my wrist so hard I thought the bone would break. He said after everything he'd done for me, everything he'd sacrificed, this was how I repaid him. During the argument, Alicia discovered the prepaid phone card Tasha had purchased earlier that evening. Enraged, he searched her luggage, finding a hidden phone she'd managed to buy without his knowledge. The phone contained text messages to a women's shelter in Detroit. He smashed the phone against the wall, Tasha continued, wincing at the memory. He said no one would ever love me like he did, that I belonged to him. He said if I wouldn't accept our bond willingly, he would make sure I understood who I belonged to. What followed was a violent struggle as Alicia attempted to sexually assault his daughter. Furniture was overturned as Tasha fought to escape. She managed to break free momentarily and ran to the bathroom, hoping to lock herself inside, but Alicia forced the door open, striking her arm painfully against the wall. He had his hands around my throat, Tasha recalled, her fingers unconsciously touching the bruises on her neck. I couldn't breathe. The edges of my vision were going dark. My hand was feeling along the wall for anything I could use to make him stop. That's when I felt the glass light fixture. With her last conscious strength, Tasha grasped the light fixture and swung it at her father. The glass base shattered against his neck with more force than she'd intended, slicing through his carotid artery. Blood sprayed across the bathroom as Alicia released her throat, his hands moving to the fatal wound. There was so much blood, Tasha whispered. He looked surprised more than anything. He stumbled back, fell into the tub. I just stood there, watching him die. I should have felt something, grief, regret, something. But all I felt was relief. In shock, Tasha remained in the room all night, huddled in the corner of the bathroom, unable to process what had happened or to seek help. As dawn broke, some instinct for survival pushed through her trauma. She changed her blood-stained shirt for another from her suitcase, gathered her purse, and walked out of the room, past the front desk, and into the morning light. I didn't know where I was going, she explained. I just couldn't stay in that room with him anymore. The forensic evidence fully supported Tasha's account. Blood spatter analysis confirmed the single strike with the light fixture had occurred while Alicia was standing over Tasha. The defensive wounds on Tasha's arms and the bruising around her throat matched her description of the attack. DNA evidence further confirmed the attempted sexual assault. The champagne bottle from the room tested positive for a sedative. Alicia had apparently planned to drug Tasha to reduce her resistance. The ring found in the room was indeed a diamond engagement ring, not anything that would typically be given from father to daughter. Detective Dupree ordered a deeper investigation into Alicia Howard's background, revealing a pattern of controlling behavior that extended beyond his daughter. Former employees of Howard Urban Development described a boss who monitored their movements, demanded constant accountability, and created an atmosphere of fear and surveillance. He had cameras everywhere in the office, one former executive assistant recalled. He reviewed the footage daily, questioning employees about their conversations, their breaks, even their posture at their desks. I lasted 6 months before I quit. Some people called him a micromanager, but it was more than that. It was like he needed to own everyone around him. More disturbing were the connections Detective Johnson uncovered between Howard and local law enforcement in Detroit. Records showed substantial, consulting fees, paid to 3 different police officers over the years, including Detective Philip Foster, who had investigated a complaint about Tasha's welfare filed by a college counselor 3 years earlier. The counselor noted bruising on Tasha's wrists and arms, Johnson reported, reading from the file. When questioned, Tasha claimed she'd fallen downstairs. The counselor didn't believe it and reported suspected abuse. Foster interviewed both Tasha and Alicia, then closed the case, noting no evidence of wrongdoing. Foster had retired 6 months later, suddenly able to purchase a $400,000 vacation home in Florida. The money trail led directly back to Howard Urban Development through a shell company established just after the investigation closed. As the evidence mounted, Birmingham District Attorney Stacey Hoover reviewed the case personally. After 2 weeks of investigation and with Tasha's full statement, forensic evidence, and the disturbing background revelations, Freeman announced no charges would be filed against Tasha Howard. The case was classified as justifiable homicide in self-defense after a lifetime of abuse and a clear attempt at sexual assault. This case represents a catastrophic failure of multiple systems that should have protected Tasha Howard, Freeman stated in a press conference. From the family court that granted full custody to her father without proper investigation, to the educational system that allowed her isolation through questionable homeschooling, to the medical professionals who missed signs of ongoing abuse, to the law enforcement officers who were compromised by bribes, at every turn, this young woman was failed by institutions designed to protect the vulnerable. The case sparked widespread media attention and a deeper investigation in Detroit, where 3 former police officers, including the retired Detective Philip Foster, were eventually charged with accepting bribes from Alicia Howard to bury reports about his behavior. Howard Urban Development underwent scrutiny, revealing financial irregularities that had funded Howard's careful maintenance of his public image and the systematic isolation of his daughter. For Tasha, the road to recovery would be long. Dr. Nicole Adams continued working with her, addressing the complex trauma from 2 decades of abuse. Recovery from this type of prolonged trauma isn't linear, Adams explained to Dupree when he visited Tasha a month after the incident. Tasha has been conditioned since early childhood to view her father's control as love. Undoing that programming takes time. Adams connected Tasha with Latrice Gaines, a 36-year-old victim advocate specializing in familial abuse cases. With warm eyes and a calm presence, Gaines had worked with survivors of domestic violence for over a decade. She helped Tasha navigate the aftermath, including accessing funds from Alicia's estate that rightfully belonged to her. The financial control was another layer of abuse, Gaines explained as she helped Tasha open her first independent bank account. Despite being worth millions, Alicia kept Tasha dependent on a small allowance, monitoring every penny she spent. Part of her recovery includes learning financial independence. The process of unraveling Alicia's control extended to every aspect of Tasha's life. She needed to obtain her own identification documents, learn basic life skills her father had deliberately kept from her, and develop a sense of agency after years of having every decision made for her. The first time I ordered food at a restaurant by myself, I had a panic attack, Tasha confided to Dr. Adams. I kept hearing his voice telling me what I should eat, what would make me fat, how I needed to watch my figure. I sat in the bathroom for 20 minutes trying to breathe. These small victories, ordering a meal, choosing her own clothes, deciding when to sleep and when to wake, became important milestones in Tasha's recovery. Each represented a reclaiming of autonomy that had been systematically stripped away. Shanice Pearson, Tasha's long-absent mother, reached out cautiously after learning of the incident. The reunion was complicated, fraught with grief over lost years and the acknowledgement of Shanice's role in leaving Tasha vulnerable to her father's abuse. "I can't undo what I did," Shanice told Tasha during their first meeting, facilitated by Dr. Adams. I failed you in the worst way a mother can fail. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know not a day went by that I didn't think of you. That doesn't make it right, but I want you to know you weren't forgotten. Their relationship would develop slowly, with Tasha maintaining boundaries while allowing for the possibility of healing. She's not my mother in any real sense, Tasha explained to Dr. Adams. But she's another person who was damaged by him. I can understand that now. Meanwhile, the investigation into Alicia Howard's business dealings uncovered more disturbing connections. Howard Urban Development had been involved in several questionable transactions over the years, using its legitimate business as a cover for money laundering and bribery. The corruption extended to city officials who had approved Howard's development projects despite zoning concerns and environmental issues. He built his entire empire on manipulation and control, Detective Johnson concluded after reviewing the financial records. Not just his daughter, he controlled everyone in his orbit through money, blackmail, or fear. This revelation provided additional context to the isolation Tasha had experienced. Her father hadn't just been a controlling parent, he had been a man whose entire existence revolved around dominating others. Tasha had simply been his most complete conquest, a person he believed he owned entirely. 6 months after the incident, Tasha had made significant progress. She moved into a small apartment in Birmingham, unwilling to return to Detroit with its painful associations. With Latrice Gaines's support, she enrolled in psychology classes at Birmingham Community College, finding purpose in understanding the dynamics of abuse that had shaped her life. I want to help others recognize what I couldn't see for so long, she explained to Dr. Adams during a therapy session. The warning signs, the red flags, the slow isolation that happens so gradually you don't realize you're being cut off from the world. Her apartment, though modest, represented a profound achievement, the first space that was truly her own. She painted the walls bright colors, a conscious rejection of the sterile white her father had insisted upon. She made decisions about furniture, decorations, and arrangements without fear of criticism or punishment. The first night I slept here, I kept waiting for someone to check on me, to monitor my movements, Tasha told Gaines. I actually got up and put a chair against the door because I couldn't believe no one was going to come in while I was sleeping. The Magnolia Grand Hotel, shaken by its role in the tragedy, implemented new training programs for all staff, focusing on recognizing signs of domestic violence and human trafficking. Night manager Isaiah Taylor worked with local advocacy groups to develop more robust protocols for responding to guest concerns. We had all the pieces, Taylor admitted during a staff training session. The controlling behavior at check-in, the incident in the hallway, the call from the neighboring room. But we didn't put them together because we weren't trained to see the pattern. We missed the chance to intervene before tragedy occurred. Security guard Anthony Phillips, still haunted by his decision not to intervene, joined a community outreach program, speaking to hotel and hospitality workers about trusting their instincts when something seems wrong. I knew something wasn't right, he would tell audiences. I felt it in my gut. But I talked myself out of acting because I was worried about overstepping, about invading someone's privacy. I'll never make that mistake again. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Naomi Bird, the receptionist who had checked in the Howards, struggled with her own guilt. I saw the warning signs and did nothing, she confessed to Detective Dupree. I knew something was off about how he controlled her, but I told myself it wasn't my business. Now I can't stop thinking about how I could have helped her. Bird channeled her regret into action, working with a local domestic violence shelter to establish a discreet system for hotel guests to signal they needed help, a code phrase they could use at reception that would alert staff to a potentially dangerous situation. Detective Xavier Dupree made significant changes to Birmingham PD's approach to domestic violence cases, implementing new training that incorporated lessons from the Howard case. We tend to think of domestic abuse as occurring between romantic partners, he explained to a room of officers. The Howard case demonstrates how familial abuse can be just as deadly, and sometimes harder to recognize because we don't question parent-child relationships the same way. He established a specialized unit focused on identifying and investigating coercive control situations, particularly those involving parental or familial abuse. The warning signs were there for years in Tasha's case, but because her father maintained the image of a devoted single parent, those signs were misinterpreted or ignored. We need to look deeper than the public facade. In Detroit, the investigation into police corruption connected to Alicia Howard continued to expand. 2 more officers were implicated in covering up concerns about Tasha's welfare over the years. Records showed that teachers, neighbors, and even medical professionals had reported suspicions, only to have those reports buried by Howard's paid connections within the department. The case also prompted a review of Michigan's homeschooling regulations, which had allowed Alicia to completely isolate Tasha under the guise of education. Lawmakers began discussing reforms that would require regular evaluation of homeschooled children by independent professionals to ensure their safety and proper education. As the 1-year anniversary of that fatal night approached, Tasha continued to build a life defined by her own choices rather than her father's control. She had completed 2 semesters at Birmingham Community College with excellent grades, joined a support group for survivors of familial abuse, and begun volunteering at a crisis hotline. "The most important thing I've learned," she told Dr. Adams during a session marking a year of therapy, "is that healing isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about reclaiming the parts of yourself that were taken, your choices, your voice, your boundaries." On the anniversary itself, Tasha spoke to a small gathering at the Birmingham Survivor Center. The group included other survivors of familial abuse, victim advocates, and several of the professionals who had been involved in her case, including Detective Dupree, Latrice Gaines, and Dr. Adams. Detective Dupree attended, bringing with him the now-closed case file. "This belongs to you," he told her, handing over the thick folder. "Your story is your own now." Tasha stood before the group, her voice soft but steady. "For 23 years, I believed the lie that I was loved too much to be free. I was told that the cage was for my protection, that the control was for my own good. I know now that real love doesn't imprison, it liberates." She described how she was rebuilding her life piece by piece, learning to make decisions without fear, to trust her own judgment, to recognize healthy boundaries. "Some days are harder than others," she admitted. "I still hear his voice in my head sometimes, questioning my choices, telling me I'll fail without him. But those voices grow fainter with time." Tasha had begun volunteering at a crisis hotline, where her first-hand understanding of abuse dynamics helped her connect with callers in similar situations. "When someone tells me they can't leave because their abuser loves them too much, I understand exactly what they mean," she explained. "I can tell them, from experience, that what they're describing isn't love at all." She shared the small triumphs that others might take for granted, choosing her own meal at a restaurant, wearing clothes her father would have forbidden, staying up late reading books he would have confiscated, making friends without his approval. Each of these choices might seem insignificant to someone who's always had freedom, Tasha explained. "But for me, they represent a reclaiming of my humanity, piece by precious piece." The security cameras at the Magnolia Grand Hotel had captured both the final moments of a lifetime of abuse and the first steps of Tasha's liberation. Those same cameras provided the evidence that ultimately protected her from further injustice, a rare instance where surveillance worked in a victim's favor. In the aftermath of the case, Alicia's journals became teaching tools for law enforcement and social workers across Alabama. Experts in coercive control used them to identify the subtle progression from concerned parenting to dangerous obsession. "The Howard case illustrates how abusers can hide in plain sight," explained Dr. Nicole Adams in a training session for family court judges. Alicia Howard wasn't just respected in his community, he was celebrated as a model father. Yet behind closed doors, he was systematically destroying his daughter's sense of self, isolating her from help, and creating a private world where his control was absolute. For the hotel staff who had interacted with the Howards, the case provided painful but necessary lessons. Many continued to grapple with the knowledge that they had witnessed pieces of the abuse pattern without recognizing its significance. "I keep thinking about her eyes," DeAndre Wells, the waiter who had served the Howards dinner, told a journalist who covered the story. "They were like shutters closed against a storm. If I had known what to look for, maybe I could have helped somehow." This sentiment, the wish to have recognized the danger and intervened, became a catalyst for change throughout Birmingham's hospitality industry. Hotels, restaurants, and public venues implemented training to help staff identify signs of trafficking, domestic abuse, and coercive control. For Tasha's mother, Shanice, the process of rebuilding a relationship with her daughter remained complicated. The decades of separation couldn't be erased, and the guilt of having left Tasha behind created a barrier that required patience and understanding on both sides. "I don't expect her to call me Mom," Shanice explained during a joint session with Dr. Adams. "I haven't earned that. But I hope someday she'll think of me as someone who cares about her, someone who wants to be part of her life in whatever way she's comfortable with." Slowly, tentatively, they began building a relationship, not as mother and daughter in the traditional sense, but as two women connected by a shared trauma and the possibility of healing. They would meet for coffee occasionally, carefully navigating the complex emotions their relationship evoked. Today, Tasha Howard continues her studies in psychology, working part-time at the Women's Crisis Center where her lived experience helps others recognize the warning signs she missed. Her story has been featured in educational materials about coercive control, helping others understand how abuse can hide behind a facade of devotion. "When people ask me how I survived, I tell them I almost didn't," Tasha shares with those who seek her guidance. "Survival wasn't a single moment in that hotel bathroom, it's an ongoing process, a daily choice to reclaim what was taken from me. Freedom isn't just the absence of my father, it's learning who I am without his definition." The hotel room where Alicia Howard died no longer exists. The Magnolia Grand remodeled the entire 5th floor, converting room 512 into a supply closet and staff area. But the lessons of what happened there continue to resonate, reminding us that sometimes the most dangerous predators are those who claim to love us most. Dr. Adams, reflecting on Tasha's progress, observed that healing from such profound abuse is never truly complete. "Recovery isn't about returning to who you were before the trauma," she explained. For Tasha, there is no before, the abuse shaped her entire life. Instead, recovery is about creating a new self, one choice at a time, building an identity based on freedom rather than control. Detective Dupree, who has maintained contact with Tasha, marvels at her resilience. "I've worked hundreds of cases in my career," he notes, "but few have affected me as deeply as Tasha Howard's. To see someone emerge from that level of control and manipulation with her humanity intact, it's nothing short of miraculous." As Tasha approaches the second anniversary of her liberation, she continues to discover new aspects of herself, preferences, talents, and dreams that were suppressed under her father's control. She has begun painting, finding a creative voice that was denied for decades. Her apartment walls display vibrant canvases, each representing another piece of her emerging identity. "For the longest time, I didn't know who I was apart from being his daughter, his possession," she reflects. "Now I get to find out, one day at a time. Sometimes it's terrifying, but it's my terror, my joy, my life, finally mine." The security cameras that captured Tasha walking out of the Magnolia Grand Hotel that November morning caught more than just a traumatized young woman leaving the scene of a violent death. They documented the first steps of a journey from captivity to freedom, from object to person, from survival to living. Those same cameras, reviewed frame by frame during the investigation, revealed a subtle but profound transformation. As Tasha crossed the hotel lobby toward the exit, her steps initially faltering and uncertain, something changed. Just before pushing through the front doors, she straightened her shoulders slightly, a barely perceptible shift that, in retrospect, marked the first moment of her liberation. The truth behind closed doors can only come to light when we have the courage to share it. If this story moved you, help others discover it by sharing this video. Leave a like so others can see this story and gain awareness. And don't forget to subscribe to Guilty Whispers. Together, we can ensure that stories like Tasha's are never forgotten and that justice finds its voice.